I'd like to introduce John from England, who takes LDN for multiple sclerosis. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Could you tell me when you were diagnosed with MS?
2004.
And what symptoms were you experiencing at that time?
At that time, I suppose it was foot drop, and also I'd had a couple of seizures.
Right.
And that was basically the start of it.
Did you notice any problems prior to being diagnosed?
In hindsight, yes, I tripped over curbstones, which, not curbstones, slightly proud, I suppose, slabs that most people would have skipped over, but obviously I was dragging slightly, but I didn't realize it at the time since I was out running in those days.
Right. Okay. So what impact did your diagnosis have on your life? I mean, did you have to stop running?
Well, I certainly had to stop running. The primary progressive MS, it is a slow progression, and for me it was initially a slow progression. I continued to do as much sport as I possibly could. I was a very keen golfer. I continued to play, and in fact we still went on walking holidays. There was some use of sticks, etc., but just to make sure I didn't trip up. But we tried to stay active as long as possible.
Yes. So before you found LDN, what were your symptoms at that point?
Well, it was almost exactly 2 years ago. I started taking it September 2010. The symptoms were, at that stage, the walking was an awful lot worse. But as always with MS, fatigue was a problem. But more importantly, started to have problems with the waterworks in terms of its hesitancy, urgency, and I suppose also down there, I suppose, erectile dysfunction as well is a major problem with MS, and that certainly I had those three symptoms quite clearly.
And when you have trouble with needing the toilet, it makes leaving home very difficult, and I should think going on long walks even more difficult.
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, unfortunately, about the same time as I started on LDN, I started on self-catheterization, which, of course, made life slightly more bearable. No, it made it much more bearable. It's just the fact that you have to go through the nose of actually, which is, for any man, every man's not done it. It immediately brings tears to your eyes to think about it. But in fact, once you've done it 3 times a day for 2 years, you get quite used to it.
I'm sure you do. Okay. So if you had to rate your quality of life on a score of 1 to 10 before starting LDN, and 10 being the best, what would it have been?
Before taking LDN, I suppose the answer would be about 3.
Okay. Pretty low then, wasn't it? So
not great, but I'm still. I mean, quality of life is all to do with what was I doing. I suppose I could perhaps put that up to 4 by virtue of the fact that I was still, when I took LDN, I was still actually managing to play golf.
Right.
Which is subsequently I've not been able to.
Right. So when you heard about LDN, how did you go about getting a prescription?
Right. Well, I'm a member of an organisation called Mutual Support, which looks after either current and ex-service personnel with MS, and it was at a forum for Mutual Support that I went to, where there were some people there who took LDN who thought it was not a miracle drug, but thought it was very good for them, and I therefore got in touch with my MS nurse at Ipswich when I came back from that forum, and asked if I could be prescribed, and basically he did say that it was quite expensive but he would recommend it to my GP, who might arrange for it to be given to me as a private prescription, which is what happened.
Okay. And when you first started, did you notice any side effects?
There were no side effects from LDN, no.
And
I took it initially in the liquid form,
mhm.
a low dose to start off with, building up to, I think it was a 5 milligram teaspoon a day. So you did that, whatever was recommended at the time, which was a slow sort of introduction up until I was onto the 1 spoonful a day. I subsequently, probably after 6 months, went on to capsules.
Okay.
It's so much easier to administer, and yet, of course, they are much more expensive, sadly. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the difference is, I mean, the liquid is £17.50 a month, and the capsules are £30.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That is. I didn't actually know the exact differences, but yes, I do now use a chemist in Glasgow,
Yes.
Dixon's. I have done now for probably 15 months or more, and they, in fact, I just had some delivered this morning. They brilliantly, if I send them a letter on a Monday in the first-class mail, my LDL arrives on Thursday, and in the capsule form, and that's how I prepared to take it.
And how long did it take before you noticed any improvement?
Well, this is where, unfortunately, sadly with MS, you don't get an awful lot of improvement. When I started to take LDN, I was having terrible problems with urgency, particularly during the night. 4 or 5 times I would have to get up for next to nothing really, but it was the fact that I couldn't sleep by virtue of the fact that I was desperate that I might not be able to make the toilet and just to have a pee. And I thought that LDN at the time, because it was just before I was self-catheterizing, I thought that the LDN was probably cutting that down by a factor of probably perhaps even as much as 60%. So in other words, I was perhaps having to get up only twice during the night rather than 4 or 5 times. And of course, as I said, I took LDN only just before self-catheterization, which of course then, took away most of the problems up through the night. By virtue of the fact that if you can empty your bladder before you go to bed, then and you haven't had an awful lot to drink before you in the evening beforehand, there's nothing there, so a night's sleep is possible.
That's good. And what about the fatigue? Did it help with that?
No, I don't think it did.
Right. So what would you rate your quality of life at today?
Well, I'm totally not wheelchair bound. I am unable to walk more than I can't even walk. I can't even walk 1 step really unaided. So my quality of life in terms of ability to mobility is pretty awful. In terms of what I try and achieve with my life, well, that's just mind over matter in terms of trying to make the quality of life as good as possible. I do things which, using my scooter, which I have a little scooter that fits in the back of the car, that this is an electric machine that gets me mobile, and I get out and about, and I'm actually still able to drive a golf buggy, so I go on the golf course locally as a member of the golf club and do what's called the course marshalling, which is just a policing of a golf course that I used to be a member of, I'm still a member of, and have been so for 20 odd years. So I do try and keep as active as possible, and when I play bridge quite a lot. The things that I can do in a sitting position, my mind is still as active as it's always been, and I'm still able to do as much as I can when I'm in a sitting position. Sadly, anything to do with activity in terms of walking from anywhere to anywhere is a no-no.
Yes. But it seems as though that you're coping with it quite well, doesn't it? What would you say to other people with MS who are contemplating trying LDN?
I would say, like I would say to any person with MS, is if there's any drugs out there that can possibly give you some respite from the ailment that you get with MS, then it's worth having a go, because everybody's different. Everybody's MS is completely different. I've never yet found somebody who's exactly the same as me, and there must be somebody out there. But it is such a diverse symptoms for this wretched ailment that it is hard to find somebody exactly the same. If it's certainly the positive nature of the guy whose name was Pearl Bryant, who was actually, I don't know whether you ever come across him, but he was absolutely amazingly positive about LDN, and so I enthusiastically tried it. I'm not certain now that it's working an awful lot, but at the same time, I don't particularly want to stop because I thought it did have some benefits, and so I shall continue probably to take it. I would say that if there are any other drugs that come out at the moment, there's Famotidine or Fampira, that is another drug that's coming out that I would strongly recommend anybody to try it, because anything is worth trying rather than suffer the disability that MS brings upon us.